Shalom, my friends from Israel. We're in the middle of the Pesach week, and we call these days Chol HaMoed. We wish each other Moadim Lesimcha. That means, may this time be joyful. Like I said last week, today we will continue learning Pirkei Avot together. And also the next weeks between Pesach and Shavuot. After Pesach, we will return to our regular learning schedule. Let's start at chapter 3.9. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa Omer, Kol Sheriyat Cheto Kodemet Lechokmato Chokma Mikademet. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa says, anyone whose fear of sin precedes his wisdom will endure. This Mishnah starts with describing an individual whose motivation to acquire a fear of sin precedes his motivation to acquire wisdom. His initial goal was to become a person who fears sin, and he seeks within the Torah for wisdom how to acquire that fear of sin. When he sees how effective Torah is in bringing us closer to this objective, he derives an enormous amount of satisfaction from it, and therefore he longs even more to study Torah. So we learned already a year ago that we should learn Torah for its own sake, not to derive any benefit for it. But here we learn another aspect. If an individual lives according to the rule that whose fear of sin precedes his wisdom, it means that his deep desire is not to sin. And he starts looking into Torah for wisdom, for answers, for secrets, how to acquire that character trait. This Mishnah alternatively refers to a person whose fear of heaven is the foremost, is the first thing that comes up in his mind, and therefore he distances himself from any forbidden item or transgression. He even puts fences around it, so he will not get close to the seduction of sinning in something, due to the fact that his fear precedes, so comes first, his fear of sin comes first before wisdom. Through it, he will steer clear of transgression. So he doesn't want to sin, he looks for fear to sin, he looks in the Torah for answers and for how to acquire that fear of sin. So he starts learning more and more and more Torah. He sees it is effective. He continues to learn more Torah, and the circle is round. It's a wonderful principle. But bechol shechmato kodemet lirat cheto ein chokmato mitkademet. And anyone whose wisdom precedes his fear of sin, his wisdom will not endure. So if wisdom comes first and only then fear of sin, his wisdom will not endure. Why? Because When one pursues Torah wisdom and he learns Torah and Torah and Torah without fear for sin, eventually, you don't have the perseverance to continue studying Torah, because Torah study is about truth and false. So you learn what is the truth and what is false. It's not only good or wrong, it's true or false. So you can learn about everything that is true. But if you're not able to encounter, to counterfeit, to stand up against fear, against sin, then the Torah wisdom doesn't help you. And let's see. It is likened to a building with no foundation. Similarly, understands Rav Yonah that a symbiotic relationship exists between the fear of sin. So a symbiotic relationship is an interconnected relationship in all aspects between Torah knowledge and the fear of sin. Torah must be studied for the sake of improving one's character. Torah works as a shield. He also used to say anyone whose actions exceed his wisdom will endure. That means if a person gives abundantly to charity and fulfills more and more of the Torah commandments, the mitzvot, then he has studied. So he does more than he's acquired to. He is guaranteed that his wisdom will endure. Such an individual maintains a great thirst for knowledge to close the gap between what he knows and what he does, and will therefore seize every opportunity to study further on. And while studying further on and understanding more of Torah, automatically there will be a distance, a more distance and a protection and a fence between you and sin. Let's see. So the same idea is found at Matan Torah, what we will celebrate in Shavuot in 7 weeks, where the Torah was offered to Am Israel. And Am Israel said, we will do and we will listen. So that's like putting the action first before the wisdom. They said, we will do and we will listen. We will listen here doesn't mean the shomea that's used in the Torah. It doesn't just mean hearing in your ears, but listen is here, the word used here means action. Listening, understanding, overthinking it, and therefore understand what we are doing. So, but first we do, and then we try to understand. How could they attempt to fill the Torah when they had not yet heard the content of Torah? Rather, they first dedicated themselves to unquestionably carry out the will of Hashem, whatever He might command. We will do. Whatever you will say, we will do. Because they knew their answer to their future, to their present, was Hashem. He brought them there out of slavery, and they knew that in order to keep on going onward near the future, what was promised in the promised land, they would have do so by first doing what Hashem asks them to do, and only afterwards understanding. The Mishnah also refers or maybe referring to one who rises up fences, I just already said it, around the Torah study and acts within the letter of law. You do everything precisely, and you raise up fences, because if you would accidentally transgress the fence that you put up, which you are not allowed to as a fence to do, even though that fence is stronger than the Torah mitzvot itself, we do it in order to protect ourselves and to keep away transgressing Torah. But anyone whose wisdom exceeds his actions, whose wisdom comes first, and then his actions, his wisdom will not endure. When a person does not put his knowledge into practice, it bespeaks a lack of motivation to acquire wisdom. If it's just in your head, but your hands and your feet are doing something else, it doesn't work. You must be whole as a body, as a person. And what you know and what you learn is what you put into practice also. Rav Bachaya says, if a person studies Torah, but he doesn't do the mitzvot, or he does not put it into practice, it's better that he would not have studied ever at all. Those are strong opinions, but they all try to put in perspective that we should have fear for sin first, and that we should actions, we should do what we are taught to do by the Torah before we will understand it by our wisdom. A parable. A man approached a shopkeeper and asked to purchase wine. When the shopkeeper requested that he produce a vessel to receive the wine, the man offered his pocket. The man then asked to purchase oil, and when the shopkeeper requested that he may produce a vessel to receive the oil, the man offered a wicker basket. Incensed, the shopkeeper betrayed him. You have no receiving vessels, and yet you come to request wine and oil, because it will zip through his clothes and through the what was the second vessel? A basket. We cannot keep oil in a basket or wine in our pocket. That's not wise. If we want it, we should bring a bottle. Then we can carry it. We can bring it home. So you have no receiving vessels, and yet you come to request wine and oil. In the same manner, Hashem replies to the wicked who study the Torah but do not fulfill its commandments. You have no good needs. Then your credit and your get seek to study Torah. Ten. Anyone with whom the spirit of his fellows is pleased, the spirit of the omnipresent is pleased with him. Rav Hanina ben Dosa said the following about this. If one is accepted and beloved among his peers, then he certain he enjoys a similar good standing in the eyes of God. In Yoma 86 of the Gemara, it says, it explains that when one deals faithfully and honestly with others, his behavior is attributed to the Torah he has studied. And about such an individual, Hashem will say, and people will say, fortunate is his father who taught him Torah. Fortunate is his teacher who taught him Torah. Hashem says about Am Israel, who received the Torah and proclaimed, we will do, and afterwards we will understand. In Yeshayahu 49, it says, "You are my servant Israel, through whom I am glorified." To be praised by his creation is what God desires. So one whose behavior motivates others to praise Hashem is certainly beloved by him. So the chesed of Hashem is forever. But the Mishnah does not require of man that the spirit of all of his fellows be pleased with him. We cannot make everyone be at the same level of thinking positively about us. It's impossible to please all the people all of the time and at the same time. Chassidut, piety is taken to an extreme. It can sometimes lead a person to engage in behaviors they mean that others may find repulsive. Though he may diligently keep the commandments between man and God and study the Torah, God is not pleased by him, through him, with him. Sometimes we can exceed our chassidut, our piety, we want so much that we keep on doing more and more difficult and more work for Hashem. But the converse of the above lets one think that it is possible to be scorned by society yet still be loved by God. If the people around don't like us, that means we don't spread a favorable odor. What we should do is learn Torah sincerely. The sacred wisdoms in our hearts that goes in front of us and will make the people also see Torah. One's relationship with one's fellows, with his friends, with his family, the people that are around him, for better or for worse, is a direct indication of his relationship with God. Rav Dosa ben Harkina says that there are 4 activities which we should avoid, since they keep one from study of Torah and performance of mitzvot. And again, we must study Torah for itself, but also, studying Torah also will help us overcome our sin and our desire to sin. We will get stronger people by it and have a stronger character. Morning sleep. Shana shel shacharit. When one sleeps late into the morning hours, he will miss the time to recite in the morning shacharit. And shacharit is one of the obligated prayers we do in the morning. So once you're a Jew, once you start living like a Jew, there's no more sleeping late for a man. Either he goes to shacharit at 6 or 7 or 8, but certainly not at 11 or 12 because he wants to sleep on late into the day. So morning sleep, midday wine, children's chatter, and sitting at gatherings of the ignorant remove a person from the world. So sleeping in late is not good for us to do. So we won't. Midday wine. It's better not to drink so much wine. If you only drink wine at the Kiddush and Shabbat, it's the best. We don't have a need to drink wine. But if you do, don't drink too much. Drink just 1 glass, more than enough. And then it will not stand in between you and acquiring what knowledge of Hashem. One should therefore avoid drinking at this time of the day, for in such a state not only will he be unable to engage in Torah study or the performance of mitzvot, but it could lead to commission of transgression, which will lead eventually to be removed from the person. The person will be removed from the world. Don't get drunk, because when one is drunk, he forgets his creator, as Yeshayahu said already. Um, Also, children's chatter remove the person from the world. What is children's chatter? People and parents in particular feel a natural affinity toward young children and enjoy interacting with them. When prolonged, such activities not only keeps the fathers from the Torah study, but has a degrading effect on their level of maturity and intellectual sophistication. One must take particular care during the study session he just set up in the home, not to be distracted by family members, but there must be a balance. If there's no balance, it will always uh, um, end up in trouble. What also removes us from the world, hazeh, from this world, is sitting at gatherings of the ignorant. They will have idle talk. They will talk about things that are not important or even are personal and private. We should not discuss it together. And it will derive our mind away from Torah. So don't do this. Not only does sitting with the ignorant keep us uh, on from studying of Torah, but it can lead to further fraternizations and the commissions of transgressions. So these four activities listed remove the world from this world, the person from this world. Uh, Torah study becomes the first casualty. Sole purpose in this world is to engage in the study of Torah. If instead he wastes his time on such shallow matters, he demonstrates that he is not deserving of life and will be banished from the world. So too is the fate of one who squanders the gift of life by not studying Torah. Morning sleep is a metaphor for laziness. People doesn't like people that are lazy. Midday wine is a metaphor for the pursuit of unhealthy physical enjoyment. Sole purpose in this world is to engage in the study of Torah. If instead he wastes his time on such shallow matters, he demonstrates that he is not deserving of life and he will be banished from this world. So too is the fate of who squanders the gift of life by not studying Torah. Hashem gave us our lives and he brought us on the path of Torah. And once he put us on the path of Torah, we are responsible for learning Torah. We cannot back down, back off again, after a while give up and start living our own lives again. No, once you tasted Torah, one Hashem let you taste Torah, uh, you should use the gift Hashem gave you, namely your own life in your own time, and use it to invest in Torah study. Okay, so morning sleep is a metaphor for laziness. Midday wine is a metaphor for the pursuit of unhealthy physical enjoyment, and children's chatter is a metaphor for impure frivolity. Sitting at the gatherings of the ignorant, what we did not yet talk about, is a metaphor for idle talk. Idle talk is lashon hara. Idle talk is also talking about things that we are not allowed to talk about. For example, sexuality is something between man and wife. You don't, on your work with your colleagues, talk about sexuality. It's idle talk. It's not the place, nor the time, nor the persons with which you should talk about this. In another setting, in another time, maybe in a special series or course you're following, you can talk about those things, but not on your work. It's very inappropriate and it will only lead you away from this world. Rav Elazar learned us, teached us the following. He said, he lists 5 sins which cause a person to lose his share in the world to come. So we just talked about losing our life in the world, azeh, in this world, and now we're going to start learning about losing our share in the olam haba, in the world to come. One who desecrates consecrated objects, like desecrating objects that are consecrated to the temple use. We cannot then take it back and use it for our own benefits. An example of this is recorded in the Gemara Pesachim. It describes a certain Kohen who would wrap his hand with silk before performing the sacrificial service. His refusal to handle directly the sacred flesh and blood disgraced the sacrificial service. So how does it work? Authors soften its meaning here to disgrace consecrated objects by not treating them with the appropriate respect. If we, with our words, are already downgrading something that's holy from Hashem, then we are actually downgrading ourselves, our share in the world to come. One who disgraces the festivals, this refers to one who either performs unnecessary work on Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days of the festivals, Sukkot and Pesach. We don't work, only if it's absolutely impossible not to work, but we are given the mitzvah of not working between during the Chol HaMoed of Sukkot and of Pesach and Shavuot. One who desecrates the festival. This refers to one who either performs unnecessary work or Chol HaMoed, he does not honor these days with the appropriate food and drink, and that disgracing the festivals should carry such a strict penalty is derived from the Gemara Pesachim 118 and from Shemot 34 verse 17. You shall not make yourselves molten gods. To you shall observe the festivals of Matzot. Anyone who disgraces the festivals is regarded as if he worships idols. Okay, to finish up for today, desecrating of the days of Yom Tov proper, whose sanctity is almost on par with that of the Shabbat itself, is one of the who merely disgraces the sanctity of the immediate days by performing unnecessary work. Rav Chona Bachaya, who maintains that the Mishnah is indeed discussing one who either performs work on Yom Tov itself or who does not honor Yom Tov itself with appropriate drink and food. So next time we continue about which things keep us away from the Olam Haba. And again, we're learning about this not to make you feel embarrassed, but if it happens, these things are still in your life and you feel embarrassed, change them. Do teshuvah. Tell Hashem about it and decide not to do it anymore, but live a holy, dedicated life to Hashem. My dear friends, next week we continue. We are in the middle of Mishnah chapter 3.11 of the book of Avot, Pirkei Avot, and next time we will continue in the half of 3.11. For now, bye-bye, Shabbat Shalom, Moadim Lim Simcha, etc., etc.